Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Resident Evil 0. In the last part, we continued on through the Ecliptic Express, getting most of the way through it at this point in the process, and now we're gonna try and finish this area off, because as usual for Resident Evil, we're gonna have several areas throughout the game, and as much as it would be impressive to have an entire game set on a very large train, this isn't Snowpiercer now, is it? So last time we got the hook shot from the back of the train, and the document for it talked about a window we can use it on in this car. And this took me a while to find because for some reason I didn't identify the window as a window. It's actually on screen right now even. It's to our right on the screen. But I am going to do some inventory management here really quick just to get some stuff done. We're going to make some Molotov cocktails from memory and all that. I think starting later this part, early next, I do start fast forwarding in-depth inventory management though. As it's a lot of me picking things up, putting things down, mixing items and all that. Largely in the other classic Resident Evils, the way I'd be handling this is opening the item box and then cutting past inventory management and showing what my inventory is looking like at that point. Can't exactly do that in a game with no inventory boxes. Now can I? So, there was actually some news for this series of sorts between this part's recording and the previous ones. And we'll see by the time this gets uploaded if we hear anything else about this, if it's real or not. But there was a leaked banner image for another remake of Resident Evil 1, I'm assuming probably in the style of Resi 2 through 4 remakes. Which, neat, I guess? Through the window, you see a broken ladder. It's of no use right now, but this is why we have the hook shot. A Resident Evil 1 remake in the style of the more modern games could be neat, but I'm also not putting a lot of belief into the rumor right now. Because even though the image looks kind of official enough, for one thing to call it Resident Evil 1, which just feels kind of weird compared to everything else, but I guess it's the way to distinctify it. But also, it's currently 2:21 a.m. on April 1st, so I'm not going to believe it entirely until we hear further on it. It looks like there's a passenger cabin below the crack. Jump down through the crack. Thankfully this time Rebecca or Billy doesn't have to get swarmed by leeches up here. We can just jump down willingly. And thankfully they give you a survival knife in here, because in the case you came down here with no ammo or very low ammo, you still are probably going to want a way to take care of this zombie. Weirdly, Resident Evil 0 is probably the classic Resident Evil that's not the DS version of Resident Evil 1 I use the knife the most in, mostly because the early sections here in the train, it's a good place to use it to save on some ammo. Honestly, it is kind of funny how just mapping the knife to a different button in Resi 4, Deadly Silence, Resi 5, and all that made it just a much more useful tool, to the point where I'm surprised, like in the HD remaster of this, for instance, they didn't just map it to one of the new buttons that the more recent controllers had that the GameCube controller didn't, like L2 or R2. This here's a jewelry box. This is our main goal over here. And let's see, what could be in a jewelry box that we could use as an item even with the things I have in my inventory? I wonder if it's the other ring. Da-da-da-da! Also, I can't tell if I'm imagining things, but I swear the two rings are actively motifed after the same things as the medallions needed to get through the fountain in Resident Evil 1. Put both the rings in, we can now examine it to unlock the bag and get our key item within, the blue key card, which we can now use to go reach the deepest recesses of the Ecliptic Express here. So now we just need to reunite Rebecca and Billy once again. Thankfully, this door is not blocked. That might look threatening, it's really not. Leeches as enemies, I think only even have like 1 HP, just stepping on them can kill them, and you really shouldn't waste your ammo. They're a little bit like the bugs in the sewer in the original Resident Evil 2, where I think they can pile up the damage on you if you let them get on you, but they'll seldom get a chance to do that much, honestly. If memory serves in terms of where we just were in the train, we were on the opposite side of the car where Billy found the ice pick last time. Also, despite this being after Resident Evil 3, thankfully, basically no enemies will ever follow you from one room to another in this one, so those leeches are up there and I never need to bother with them again. So let's get our inventory all sorted out and then head towards the lead car to see if we can stop this train, I guess. Honestly, not for nothing, while the Scorpion boss can be a bit of a problem in terms of resource draining, I think the Ecliptic Express is both a really easy and really strong first hour or so for a classic Resident Evil, in terms of helping you learn how the game's going to work and what the general setup for puzzles might be potentially like. If I compare it with like the early parts of the streets in Resi 3, the early hour or so of Code Veronica, even like the first bit of the Raccoon Streets into the early sections of RPD in the original version of Resident Evil 2, I think it's a little stronger than that even. It's just after that, I think it flounders on some things. For now, though, let's head on up to the... What is the head car of a train in this case called? Is that a locomotive? Is that a engine? I actually don't know too much about trains. I almost went on one to New York once, but then COVID hit, so that plan kinda died.
This is Delta Team. This is Delta Team. We have gained control of the train. Over.
Understood.
This does not make any sense. How was the T-virus leaked? And why did it contaminate both the lab and the mansion, as well as a train almost 3 miles away?
That's irrelevant. We must make sure no knowledge of this gets out. Destroy the train. Completely. How far away are you from the nearest branch line?
About 10 minutes to...
What happened?
So are we sure we should go that way? We should? Okay. Despite that FMV happening literally right in front of Billy and Rebecca, though, the leeches are not a problem here whatsoever. Now, if this is your first playthrough, I do recommend going back to the previous hallway and saving at this point, using your first ink ribbon, because while the Ecliptic Express is overall easy, this next little bit can get a little sketchy, I will not lie.
The train will either derail or crash. I gotta stop this thing.
You know you're in for something when they give you a tutorial document. Brake Operation Manual. Using the brake control. The following 3 steps are necessary to operate the brakes. Step 1, activating the controls. Brake controls are located in the following locations. First car driver's compartment, rear deck of the 5th car. To activate the system, you must insert the magnetic car into the device into the 5th car. This will supply power to both sets of controls. Step 2, enter rear deck code. Enter the code for the rear deck unit to release the lock. After this, the driver's compartment code can be input. Step 3, enter driver's car compartment code. Enter the code for the driver's compartment unit to remove the lock. Upon completion of these 3 steps, the manual brakes will be available for use. And as that document implies, we need to split the party up again here, and there's an extra cutscene along the way if you leave Billy behind here at the driver's compartment, so we're doing just that.
I'll go over to the back deck and manipulate the control panel for the brake. You stay here and apply the brake when ready.
Okay. Rebecca,
Huh?
don't screw up, okay?
I won't.
Now, Billy is the safer choice for this overall due to his better combat potential, but I prefer to take Rebecca overall for that extra cutscene. Make sure before you go, though, you grab the handgun ammo that's here as well as the magnetic card, because you kind of need that in order to do the stuff in the back of the 5th car. I also love this song. Resident Evil 0's soundtrack is really good when it actually has an actual song. It isn't just atmospheric ambiance. Which about tracks for Resident Evil in general, though, because even I think the worst games in the series generally have some pretty good music when they actually get something going. On our way back, though, the 2 guys that we just saw get killed by the leeches come back to life as zombies. Don't bother wasting ammo because you never need to walk back through that room again. In fact, obviously we have a timer on screen, so what you really want to do here is just ignore every enemy along the way, even if you have to take a couple of hits in order to do so, because the time you spend on them is not going to be worth it in the long run. You theoretically also might be able to save at this point. I wouldn't recommend it, because something about saving while there's a countdown going on just seems dangerous at every level to me, so you probably shouldn't. This here is probably the most dangerous screen in the set, because there's like 3 or 4 zombies in here from memory at this point, which means you're probably going to get hit at least once. If you want to use any ammo here, use it to like down a zombie and then get past the other one like so. But even then, your mileage may vary. Try to knock one zombie into another to knock them down if you have to, but don't worry about it too much if you can. Again, just try to get through there without firing much ammo, because you're going to want it for what's coming up here in the case you want to kill anything on this route whatsoever.
Edward! No. Stop! Don't come any closer!
Exclusively if you take Rebecca to the back of the train, Edward comes back to life as a zombie, and to my memory, he is pretty hardy in terms of his overall health. What I would recommend doing is if you have the health, just tank a hit and knock him down. Otherwise, if you don't have the health or are rather low and are worried, shoot him until he gets knocked down once and then just run right past him. You don't need to kill him. I do like that scene existing, though, because I like when Resident Evil has these little minor route differences that'll change very minor things like that. It's just a nice level of detail I appreciate seeing, and by and large, every Resident Evil, even starting from 1, has that, due to the very minute differences of what happens in some of the routes. Something I can't quite recall, though, because it's been a while since I last sent Billy down this way, is I forget if he actually has less enemies due to this. I want to say that room might have just a couple of standard zombies in it otherwise, so maybe Rebecca has fewer enemies, but again, I almost always send her back here. Maybe sent Billy back here once. So, Either way, we've reached the back of the train, so time for our puzzle that can be a couple of different things. There's a hand-operated brake here. You'll need a magnetic card to operate it. We'll just use that outright. So you may notice there's a bunch of numerical buttons on this particular lock. The way this works is that it randomly selects a number for you to reach, and you have to reach it within 10 button presses. So, for instance, with 81, just do 9 8 times, and then do an 8 and a 1. That can also be 36 or 67.
This is Rebecca. I have engaged the control device for the brake. Over.
Roger. I'll put the brake on now.
It's ultimately just rudimentary math. However, as whoever you didn't send to the back, we need to do this puzzle again, but we only can see the end number and not what we've added up to. For instance, to reach 67, we need to do 99999 55552. That can also be 36 or 81.
Rebecca!
I'm here.
Are you alright? Hey, you managed to stop the train.
Yes, we managed.
We have to find a way out.
Welcome to the rest of the game. The Ecliptic Express is done, we're never going back there because, well, it's on fire, and because of that, they realize, oh, what if you left important items back there? Any item you investigated during our trip in the Ecliptic Express will be spawned out here. The hunting gun's here, the knife that I investigated here, as is the red herb I didn't grab along the way. There are a couple of zombies in here. I don't think these are ones you left behind. I think they're always here from memory. But your goal is to either get all the important items with you before you leave, or otherwise. If there's items you want to leave behind, I'd say leave behind knives, no problem. Don't leave behind any healing items. Definitely don't leave behind any ammo. And to avoid certain beginner's traps down the line, do not leave behind the hook shot. We are going to want that again later on, annoyingly so. So grab whatever else you can. Thankfully, because of the amount of items in the Ecliptic Express anyway, there's not going to be many you're leaving behind here, more than likely, unless you really don't want to pick up healing items, or you're specifically leaving behind the hunting gun because the other shotgun equivalent is in the relatively near future, but it's nice that it's like this all the same. I know some games would have just permanently burned up whatever items you left behind there with no qualms about it, so I appreciate this little bit of forgiveness, even if it is mostly just probably because of the hookshot's existence on its own. If you can, avoid fighting those zombies, of course, but I think the items are semi-randomly placed around this area after the crash, so if there's an item you want in a very specific place, you might need to take care of one or all of them, so don't feel too bad if you have to. For now, though, let's move on and see if we can figure out where the hell we are now. Oh, a sewer. Quaint. The Ecliptic Express is pretty narrow, meaning it's kind of claustrophobic and can be a little difficult in those regards, but ultimately it's a pretty easy intro area, as we said earlier. Whether or not you like the game, I'd say you should at least get up to this point to figure it out, because if you didn't like the game up to this point, you might like it from here on. Or vice versa, in my case.
The Umbrella Research Center? The first general manager, Dr. James Marcus.
Who on earth are those people?
She's just a rookie, a member of S.T.A.R.S.
What about the mail?
I'm unfamiliar with him.
Attention. This is Dr. Marcus. Please be silent as we reflect upon our company motto. Obedience breeds discipline. Discipline breeds unity. Unity breeds power. Power is life.
Who are you?
It was I who scattered the T-virus in the mansion. Needless to say, I contaminated the train, too.
What?
Revenge. On Umbrella.
Dr. Marcus?
10 years ago, Dr. Marcus was murdered by Umbrella. You helped them, didn't you?
Welcome to the Umbrella Research Center. This is this game's RPD, later parts of the mansion, all that jazz, where, since we're past the tutorial area, this is where we're going to be spending the meat of the game. And it's also here we're going to do our first sped up inventory management, because I wanted to not speed this up through the Ecliptic Express, so you got to feel what it felt like to do, how slow it could move and all that. And there's also a couple of handgun bullets and herbs here that I wanted to mix into things as it was. The speeding up is mostly for your sake than mine, because watching that would probably get boring over and over again. The inventory management is annoying, but oh well, I can get past that. It's the fact that I wish that there were better places to access the items in the same room we dropped it in that I don't like. Now, if there's one thing I will say, I at least respect the reason they got rid of the item boxes, even if I don't like it in practice, but I'll talk more about that in a moment, because in this room here, we got a document to read. Notice to all staff. This document is very old. Much of the writing is illegible. Regular meetings of the Vaccine, Research, and Infectious Agents teams will be held. Both meetings are security level 5 and will be held in the following locations. First floor West Operations Control Room, second floor Southeast Meeting Room. The entry code shall be 815. Thank you. Good to know. Now, there is an item we're in here to grab as well, but beware the moment you grab it, a jump scare is going to happen and enemies are going to spawn in, so make a beeline for the door immediately. Not that the enemies have much of a chance to reach you, but you never know. So, the reason the game doesn't have item boxes was described directly by Shinji Mikami as well as Tatsuya Minami in a 2002 Capcom special for the magazine Hyper, which was an Australian gaming magazine that ran for a good while. The interview doesn't go super in-depth on a lot because the game technically wasn't even out yet, but they do talk about why item boxes weren't in there. In particular, it's to send up to the original Resident Evil's roots as a remake of another game. Because Sweet Home, the game that Resident Evil 1 started out as a remake of, has that exact same system. You can just drop items on the floor and pick them back up later. And that's an admirable effort. I think that is kind of neat as a respectful nod to the original origin for Resident Evil 1. But who is it annoying to play with? Regulations for trainees. Training Facility Mission. This training facility will raise a new generation of model employees to serve the future of Umbrella Corporation. Applying the strictest and most rigorous training standards, this facility will, without regard for gender, race, or creed, produce only the best candidates to be the global future leaders of Umbrella Corporation. We look forward to the development of your leadership qualities. Training Facility Guidelines. Discipline, obedience, unity. These 3 words are the basic principles which govern Umbrella Corporation employees, and are to be considered the law of this facility. Keep these words in mind at all times. Devote yourselves to your training, and bring honor to yourselves and the corporation. James Marcus, Director, Umbrella Corporation Management Training Facility. Worth noting, the interview itself is actually kind of hard to find. I found it effectively through looking at Wikipedia's sources. It is archived on the Wayback Machine via some old Project Umbrella snapshots, effectively. Also, something I've always found pretty weird. There was a typewriter in the previous room, of course, because that's the first room of this area. There's another one up here that has even more ink ribbons. If there's anything I can recommend with Resident Evil 0 in specific, by the way, I usually save on the same file in any given Resident Evil game. You should save over successive slots, even if that takes up a lot of your memory card here in 0, because due to the co-op mentality and the healing items that then have to be split between 2 people, mistakes can be kind of costly moving forward. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 4, we're going to take a look around and see if we can find anything notable to just get a grip on where to go next. See you guys then.